It goes without saying that Cartoon Network Lost Media is one of my favorite categories of lost media, and I would maybe go as far to say it's my favorite of all time. While I watched both Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network growing up, and enjoyed both, it was the latter that stuck with me into my teenage years, and even early high school, only ending once my family stopped paying for cable in 2013. For around 14 years, I was an avid viewer of the channel, and have very distinct memories of the old Cartoon Fridays block, when Foster's Home and Camp Lazlo first premiered, and the later years of Toonami when Naruto first premiered, to name a few. However, it was the era right after Toonami had been cancelled when I would say my fandom of Cartoon Network grew into an obsession, and after Tom signed off for the last time, I would never be the same. Toonami was one of my favorite blocks during that time, and when it was cancelled, it felt personal. Like Cartoon Network wasn't listening to the viewers and driving the channel into the ground on their own watch. This is exactly what was happening, and programming changes like CN Real made that even clearer. But as I grew even more frustrated by the changes, I had nowhere to voice that frustration. I wasn't even doing YouTube at the time, so making videos wasn't an option either. There was only one place I thought to go, and that was a Microsoft Word document. This acted as an archive of Cartoon Network's programming in the late 2000s and early 2010s, with inserted commentary. I worked on this for several years, nearly hitting over 150 pages of content. Someday I'd like to get it published as a book, but this little adventure as a Cartoon Network fan would eventually lead me to an entire subculture of the community that doesn't exist anymore, and hasn't existed for close to a decade. If you weren't following Cartoon Network in the early 2010s, or visited their website at all, then there's a pretty high chance you are not even aware that this topic exists. I tried doing some more research on it over the past couple years, but have come up empty-handed. There's almost nothing online about it, and very few people have mentioned it on their own. This topic is very much an instance of having been there at the right time. Fortunately, I was for the majority of its existence, and only because of that document I had written. After having worked on it for a few years, I came to the realization that I couldn't be the only person who felt like Cartoon Network was losing its identity. I hated CN Real, missed Toonami, and wanted a return to quality cartoons. While I was a couple years into making YouTube videos at this point, I didn't turn to making Cartoon Network videos because that wasn't the focus of my channel, and figured there must be somewhere to discuss Cartoon Network with other viewers and share opinions. Before trying to find a forum or message board that might not have the same level of dedicated viewers in it, I checked Cartoon Network's official website, thinking they'd have some kind of way to communicate with fans. This was the first and only place I had to look, because to my surprise, there was a dedicated forum section on their site called Fan Talk, and the decision to sign up was immediate, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into, even at the username screen. Making an account on the official Cartoon Network website gave me such an adrenaline rush. I was armed with years of extensive research on the channel and ready to rant with like-minded fans, but I had to pick my username first. My first choice was Radiant Fire, a name that I'm sure everyone in the early 2000s would have thought was really cool, but I couldn't pick that, as Cartoon Network had a really weird method for choosing names. There were 3 drop-down menus with a bunch of words on them, and you could combine them in any way you wanted. I ended up choosing something close to Radiant Fire, Radiant Lloyd Firefly, which was actually my original name in the Lost Media community before I retired it in favor of using my YouTube name. This began my journey into the forums, as I was greeted with a board of categories that led to different communities, ranging from specific shows to games that could be played on the website and, my favorite, general Cartoon Network. These topics were created by Cartoon Network themselves, and you could chat in them with other users of the site by submitting posts. After submitting a post, you'd receive a message stating a moderator would have to approve of it before it appeared in the thread. I thought the interface was pretty cool too, with its black background and mostly white text, something that could be referred to as a dark mode. Users could also customize the font of their posts, so sometimes they were difficult to read. But it was so nice seeing Cartoon Network fans interacting with each other. As I stated previously, my favorite threads were the ones that discussed general Cartoon Network, but they would constantly add new threads when new shows premiered on TV, or during certain events. There were even a few shows like Symbionic Titan and Secret Mountain Fort Awesome that remained on the forums after the series had been cancelled. Though threads like these weren't always active, and sometimes the threads would get pretty far off topic. Users would often jump to wherever the most people were, and I wanted to be where the discussion was too. I would post a bit in the new show threads to give my prestigious opinion, but there was one thread above all else that I would consider the heart of fan talk. This thread was called Cartoon Network Topic Suggestions, and if you thought debates online nowadays about Cartoon Network were heated, you have no idea what it was like being an angsty teenager in 2011 talking about Cartoon Network with other angsty teenagers. While I was a huge fan of Symbionic Titan at the time, I also labeled myself as a realist when it came to Cartoon Network programming, and couldn't see any way for the series to return. So when I noticed some users preaching about petitions and rallying fans to get the show back, I had to start an argument with them. These users were named Gorgeous Cassidy Oddball and Epic Becky Robot, two of the first users I ever interacted with on the forums, and needless to say, we immediately started an argument about why or why not the show should return. Even though the interaction was pretty heated, there was something about it that I not only enjoyed, because it was exactly what I was looking for in a forum, but felt a connection to as well. I didn't join Fan Talk until a couple years after it was already up, so there were hundreds of other users who had been there before. But Cassidy and Becky were veteran users with high post counts, while most other users only had a few, and seemed to leave after that. I'm not sure if it was my hard opinions, or just the way I presented myself, but I started making a presence there, and I was very active too, constantly running into the same active users and meeting some new ones over the months, like Musical Miranda Mutant, Beast Boy Cahill, and Amazing Buffy Potato. We discussed and argued all about Cartoon Network and its programming, what we liked and what we didn't, and even some content unrelated to Cartoon Network. We became a group of users that I like to think ran the site, the authority, the ones people looked up to, and the ones with the highest post counts. We made that topic suggestions forum our home base, and stuck together as a group that roamed the site, all connected to each other. But it wouldn't always be like this. A couple years later, in 2013, Cartoon Network revamped the forums and, unlike the previous format, introduced the ability for users to create their own threads. While they still had all the old ones up, the site became increasingly messy, as new threads were being created so quickly and didn't get many replies. Cartoon Network even changed the interface from black with white text to white with black text, which I didn't like as much, and the moderation got worse too. We always had issues with the moderators during the old interface, and to this day, I'm still not sure if they were humans or bots. Sometimes we would coordinate test posts to see which ones got through and which ones didn't, with the results being pretty inconsistent. I got so frustrated, I eventually added a disclaimer to my posts, stating that the opinions in them were mine and do not reflect Cartoon Network's views. To this day, I'm still not sure if that helped during the old interface. It certainly didn't help in the new interface, making it harder to communicate as posts wouldn't go through, and that contributed to the group breaking up. Though there were other factors too. The group had gotten smaller over the years as users began losing interest in Cartoon Network, and the site being so messy didn't help. At one point, a few members created a spin-off group called Random Chat Awesomeness that we were invited to join, but at the time I passed, and once I did decide to check it out, the site was abandoned. New users were joining the forums that I didn't consider to be my friends, and I had even stopped working on my Cartoon Network document around this time. Eventually, FanTalk was pushed further and further back on my interest list, and despite making an effort to keep in touch with the users I talked to, it never happened to a large extent like the first couple years of FanTalk. However, years later when I developed my lost media searching skills, I was able to find one of my good friends through a trail of old posts, Amazing Buffy Potato. She remembered me and we caught up a bit, while reminiscing about the days of FanTalk. When we talked about the old days on the forums, that was one of the first times I even thought about it in years. While I've been covering Cartoon Network lost media for years, this topic is one that never came back to my mind, so for some nostalgia, I wanted to revisit the forums, see what it's like nowadays, and maybe read through our old discussions if the threads went back that far. But unfortunately, they didn't. In fact, they didn't go back to any point in time, because they were gone. Every thread was gone. The entire FanTalk section at the top of the website was gone. This is where the lost media for this topic really comes into play, because at some point after I had stopped using the forums in 2013, Cartoon Network wiped them from existence. You'd never know they existed at all if you hadn't seen them on the site back then, because there's almost no mention or documentation of them online, as I mentioned earlier in the video. After I had stopped actively using the forums, I did go back to them a couple years later in the mid-2010s and noticed the interface was broken and threads looked inactive. At the time, I thought this might have been a sign that Cartoon Network was going to take them down. While I still don't know exactly when they went down, I was somehow able to save content in the event that this would be the last time I'd be on the site. I archived my user profile along with the last few posts I ever made to the site, and did the same thing for Amazing Buffy Potato. I tried to find the others, but the site was too broken to navigate, and most of them hadn't been active in those last couple years. Unfortunately, the loss doesn't end just with content from Cartoon Network's site, and it extends to the other reliable place to go for lost media, the Wayback Machine. I figured a lot of the profiles and posts we made would be too specific to find, but believed there could be large portions of FanTalk saved, for the fact that it existed for years. This wasn't the case, and there's not a lot that was saved by the Wayback Machine. Only the first couple pages of a few of the threads, but you can't get very far. I wanted to read through the vast quantity of posts made, both the well-worded ones and the horrible grammatically incorrect ones, to relive some memories, but it can't happen. I shouldn't be too surprised at this, since other forums I've researched on the Wayback Machine before are also not backed up too well. However, that's not to say I lost all my content from it. This is like finding personal lost media that you didn't know you had, because for years, I forgot that I even had these or that I saved them at all. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that the moderators on the site had to approve posts before they would appear in the thread, and oftentimes they'd get rejected. It was really annoying when this happened because there was no notification system, so you didn't know when your post was rejected, other than waiting a few hours and not seeing it in the thread. But also, you'd have to write out the whole post again. I'm sure most people who used the forums didn't do this, but if one of my posts was rejected, I'd resubmit it a few hours later and it would usually get approved. As a result of this happening, and so I wouldn't have to remember what I originally typed, I would copy and paste every message into a Word document for easy access if I needed to resubmit a post. This means I unintentionally created an archive of nearly every post I ever submitted to FanTalk, and have them all saved in Word documents. Some of the earlier files have the replies of who I was talking to, but the later ones don't, so unfortunately, I'm still missing some content from other users. I love the irony of the annoying moderators being the reason why so much of this was saved. This might be the most extensive archive of FanTalk content to still exist, because of how the Wayback Machine didn't save a lot. I'm sure there are still some people out there that used FanTalk and are active online. If you're one of those people, leave a comment to share your experiences too. And if you're someone that talked to Radiant Lloyd Firefly, I'd love to read a comment from you too. I'm sure my experience on the forums was better and more interesting than most, but it's still a piece of the past that lives on through memories. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.